Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Friday, April 12th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. This is the title for Episode 9. We saw the trailer. We saw a panel from Star Wars Celebration. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
May the Force be with you, Peter.
And writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
So we have a lot to unpack here. We just got done covering the Star Wars Episode 9 presentation from Star Wars Celebration. I think we have a total of like 9 or 10 articles on the site from this that we have produced in the last like couple hours alone, right? But I guess we should begin at the ending. And the ending was this trailer that they presented on screen, at the end of this panel. I guess let's start with reactions. Jacob, what is your reaction to this trailer?
Man, J.J. Abrams movies always cut into really good trailers. The guy is a hell of a visual filmmaker, and this trailer is genuinely exciting. It's exciting to see these characters back together. It's exciting to see how well he stages action. It's exciting to see new worlds of Star Wars, including the sort of boggy, foggy planet we haven't seen before. There's stuff in this trailer that's genuinely exciting to see and thrilling to watch. We'll see where the story goes, but in terms of like a piece of marketing that's supposed to get me excited, I'm excited.
Yeah, it seems to me like this trailer is trying to sell a couple things. It's selling the idea that this is the final installment of the Skywalker saga films. It seems like it's JJ responding to all that criticism about, Force Awakens being a echo of A New Hope. Like, it seems like we're seeing all sorts of new worlds here, none of which we've seen prior in the Star Wars saga. I don't think that desert planet is Jakku or Tatooine. I think that's a new planet. And we are seeing most of the main cast. I'm actually kind of surprised that we didn't see Rose Tico. We did see Lando, who looked like he was having so much fun back in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. We'll talk about the shots and stuff later, but I really enjoyed this trailer. I think, he leaves us on some very breathtaking shots that makes us ask questions. And we're going to get to those questions in this podcast. HT, what did you think of the trailer?
Yeah, there's a great energy to this trailer. It's just so kinetic and dynamic. And I think that, like you said, Peter, it doesn't quite echo the previous, like the first trilogy as much as Force Awakens did. There aren't that many shots that are, too nostalgic or anything. It very much feels like it's moving forward, except for like a final shot that we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But I do like that at the beginning of this trailer, it opened on Rey's heavy breathing, which was a nice callback to the first Force Awakens trailer.
Oh, for sure. Chris, I think you are the only one here that might have not loved this trailer.
I really liked this trailer for almost its entire length. It's a well-cut trailer. The visuals are fantastic. I love the lighting of this movie. The lighting is a lot different than the last two movies. I love that opening shot of Rey in the desert. I love that, Western callback where the camera, zooms on her hand with the lightsaber. I loved all of that. I loved the action and I loved the energy. All of it is great. And then we get to the end. First, we see a shot of the Death Star in the ocean or whatever, and immediately it's just like, oh, good, another thing with the Death Star. And then we hear the Emperor laughing. And to solidify that point, Ian McDiarmid, the actor who plays the Emperor in the Star Wars franchise, came out on stage and he did the Emperor voice. And I am not,
play it again. What he said.
I'm really not on board with this. I know none of us have seen the movie yet. I know there's a chance they'll make this work. I know there's even a chance that the Emperor isn't going to have like a huge role to play in the movie. But all I can think of with this is I wish J.J. Abrams would take risks. I wish he would stop.
I think that's a humongous risk because
it's not. It's literally it's just the same thing for the last trilogy.
I feel like this risk is going to divide fans. Like this is something that I don't know. I just feel like this is not something that is like a simple thing that's just going to appease fans. This is something that So, I mean, you look at the response online to like even your article, and people are like, "Calm down. We don't even know that he's alive in the movie." You know, we'll get to your article in a bit. Let's walk through the trailer first, okay? Let's calm down. Let's rewind to the beginning. We have the Lucasfilm logo. Rey is breathing, as HT mentioned, and it seemed like she was like, I don't know, in the middle of something big. Like she had just run there. She's like in the middle of some kind of action. And then we see this, like, it's actually kind of interesting that they spent so much time on this push-in shot of Daisy Ridley's Rey as she composes herself and she, you know, starts to breathe and, starts to find herself one with the Force again, like, and just take a breath. And, I think it's interesting that JJ began the first piece of marketing of this film with such a with this shot. What do you guys have to say about this shot?
This is a great shot. It's maybe my favorite shot in the trailer because it is a quiet moment, and Star Wars isn't always quiet, so it's always interested in action and adventure. And this is as said earlier, a very Western influenced shot. A woman, a warrior, alone in the desert wasteland, seeing an enemy on the horizon and just getting ready for it. And to answer your question earlier, Peter, she's out of breath, I think, because she has clearly been divided from Poe Dameron and Finn, because we see them also in the desert in the middle of a massive speeder chase with a bunch of first order troops. So I think that we're seeing two intercut action scenes here, a one-on-one fight, sort of this quiet personal showdown between Rey and Kylo Ren, while her buddies are in this extremely action-packed, chaotic chase.
Yeah, in this, I mean, Chris mentioned this whole shot is reminiscent of Westerns. It's a callback to many of those, like the wide shots here. She reaches down and grabs her lightsaber, which is the lightsaber, it's a Luke's lightsaber, which, correct me if I'm wrong, in The Last Jedi got split in two, right?
At the end of the battle with Kylo Ren, they were both force pulling it toward themselves and when split in two, and I don't think we ever saw where the pieces actually went.
Yeah, so we know that there's a big time jump here for this film, as there is with most of the Star Wars films, except for Last Jedi, and apparently she has repaired this lightsaber. Her hand's covering, what I would assume is probably going to be a seam of her welding it back together. Chris, I know there's this one shot where it's from her hip, with the lightsaber out, that I feel like is like a spaghetti Western callback shot.
Yeah, that's very much, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name series shot. That's like a direct pull from that. And that was also in Solo, a Star Wars, where they had that same shot in that. It's pretty much like a cliche at this point.
Yeah.
Like if you want to reference a Western, that's the shot everyone immediately thinks of.
Yeah. I do like the rack focus, though, where it goes and shows us what she's looking at. And there's this TIE fighter that's heading towards her. From what I can tell, this is not the Kylo Ren's normal TIE fighter. This is like a modified TIE silencer. It has like a whole new cockpit. It has a lot of red on it. And it's speeding towards her. And we see a shot from inside the TIE fighter of some hands pushing on the controls, and I assume that's Kylo Ren, right?
Yeah, I mean, who else would be wearing those black gloves to be of such importance that they're piloting a one-of-a-kind TIE fighter against Rey? It has to be Kylo.
Yeah. And in typical JJ fashion, we don't see the face. We're holding that for later. Rey is running away from the TIE fighter, and she does this crazy, like, spinning backflip that cuts right before she's about to come, jump right over this TIE fighter. I'm assuming she's going to, like, split this thing in two with the lightsaber, right?
It would be very cool. I love that shot. It's such a cool move, and I don't have anything to say other than I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
HT, really quickly though, we discussed making this an article, so I want to hear your thoughts on this for a moment. But a Star Wars trailer opening with like the first half of his trailer is entirely focused on Rey being the coolest hero in Star Wars history, practically. Can you speak to this about, like, after years of Star Wars just being the most boy-centric thing imaginable, how this makes you feel?
Oh, it's so empowering. I think it definitely flies in the face of everyone who criticized The Force Awakens so much for like making Rey such a prominent figure and making her, Mary Sue, which is the argument I completely hated. But here it allows her to just kind of bask in her awesomeness and her capabilities. And yeah, it's just it's so great to see her at the forefront. Although I wish I would have liked to see some of the other female characters too. But it's great that like more than half of this trailer is just dedicated to her.
The one thing I really like here is you definitely see her confidence and how this character has grown so much from when we saw her, at the when we found her in Jakku at the beginning of The Force Awakens. Like, she seems so much assured in herself. Mm-hmm. And the next shot we see is like the ship flying towards this Rocky Mountain snow-covered planet that's drenched in fog and the cover of night. We don't really know much about this. It seems like there's some lights down there, so there's some kind of civilization. I'm assuming the next shot gives us a clue, and that's Kylo Ren is taking out alongside, a fleet of stormtroopers, a bunch of it looks like alien creatures. Do you guys have any theories on why Kylo Ren is, doing some hand-to-hand combat here and why he's going into battle himself?
Well, I was reminded of the opening scenes of The Force Awakens when Kylo Ren personally leads stormtroopers on the Jakku to retrieve an artifact that he needs. So I think you're right in the money in your breakdown you wrote for the site, Peter, where you say that Kylo Ren, is clearly on the hunt for something and he wants it bad. And I just want to say that J.J. Abrams has such a great knack for filming action. I think Rian Johnson's also a skilled action director, but this shot here where he takes down a guy with a lightsaber is especially impressive.
Yeah, and it definitely does seem like there's been some speculation. Is J.J. going to throw out everything that Rian kind of brought to the table with Last Jedi? And J.J.'s been saying otherwise, that he's, they adapted and changed and, used some of the things. And here in this shot, I'm interested to hear what Chris has to say with this, because it definitely seems he's taking on that kind of red aesthetic that the Last Jedi that Rian brought to the Last Jedi.
So what are you, just the shot in general? You want to know what my thoughts are?
Well, not just the shot in general, maybe the trailer in general, because there is this shot where it's like kind of this red fog, but then like the next shot we see like Kylo Ren's helmet is being put back together, and that's being put together with like these red kind of like seam glowing goo, and there is there's a bunch of more red in this, like, the red in the TIE Fighter. It definitely seems like JJ isn't, completely ignoring The Last Jedi.
I sure hope so. I can't, there's so much in this trailer that makes me nervous about how he's approaching The Last Jedi, even down to the title, even though I also think the title is a bit of misdirection, but I'm sure we'll get to that. But
okay, how about this? How about the mask? Because I know you were, Rian Johnson had Kylo Ren basically destroy his mask, and now in this next shot, it's being put back together.
I think that's stupid, but I know it's just unnecessary, and that is one of the things that really worries me about how this movie is being approached in relation to The Last Jedi. And
I mean, there could be an analogy to be made here of J.J. Abrams trying to put back together the pieces of some of the things he created for Force Awakens that was destroyed by Rian Johnson. And but my question to you is, like, why is Kylo Ren even putting back together this helmet? Why not just create a new helmet? And I guess there's probably something further in that analogy that I brought up of maybe that is also saying something about J.J. Abrams.
Well, sorry to interrupt, Chris.
No, go ahead. I would just be griping. You go ahead.
Well, what I liked about the destruction of the helmet in Last Jedi was that it felt like Kylo Ren was finally letting go of his idol worship of Darth Vader and becoming a villain unto his own, and becoming a much more modern and much more unpredictable villain in a sense too. But by putting that helmet back together, it feels like it's trying to go back to being a pseudo Darth Vader again, which is fine, but definitely, I think, a little safer than what we were going for in Last Jedi.
I will say this, as someone who grew up with the Star Wars movies, and I loved Darth Vader growing up, like, I feel like someone with a mask is so much more compelling as a child, or even as, you know, an adult fan than Adam Driver, just in like this black like suit. Like, I feel like, you know, there's something about masks in Star Wars that makes that badass. I know that's not a good story reason to do this, but
yeah, I guess my one counter to that, and I totally understand your point of view, and I respect it, but I just like that how once you remove that mask, you have a villain who's just petulant fanboy, who's like literally rejecting his parents' ideals, which is like very much a very modern type of villain, who's unafraid to have his face out there in the public. It's also a very modern idea of a villain, someone who doesn't want to hide anymore. And I guess I was just refreshed by. But
I also think he's a lot less scary though without the mask. Like, he's I
don't know. I always just felt like by having the mask, it felt too much like he was aping Darth Vader both textually and like subtextually. And I like to have the idea of having a villain that is wholly different than Darth Vader.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. There's another shot of them on this desert planet. Finn is in the foreground. Poe is in the background. It looks like Finn has Rey's staff in his hand. Either that or Rey is kneeled down out of camera and holding the staff. So I'm wondering, like, has Finn adopted Rey's staff as his weapon?
It would definitely be a good merchandising opportunity for Lucasfilm, because they just have to use all the old staffs they already have and change out the tag.
Yeah. We get a shot of BB-8 alongside a new droid that they introduced in the panel. This new droid is called Dio?
I think Dio is what they said.
Dio?
Dio.
What do we know about Dio? Did they tell us anything during this presentation, Jacob?
What we know is that I love him.
What we know is that he is super cute, and like BB-8, he's a practical on-set droid, so a lot of talented, practical effects guys put him together, and he's in the same way that BB-8 is like the most adorable like dog ever. This thing is like the most adorable ugly dog ever. So I really like it in that way.
Yeah, it looks like a megaphone on a wheel, right?
Yeah, that's accurate.
It kind of reminds me of a Doctor Who. So it's like very low budget looking, and I like that. It's kind of endearing in that way.
I just wonder what the purpose, like, if we're putting ourselves in the world of Star Wars and we're in the Resistance, what is the purpose of a droid like this? Like, I can totally understand the purpose of like a BB-8 unit or R2 unit, but like, what kind of things can this kind of droid do?
Get into all kinds of wacky shenanigans.
Yeah, I guess you can get into small spaces too.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea. I'm looking forward to seeing if it's meant to be some sort of like maintenance bot kind of thing that rolls around, maybe delivering tools to people repairing X-wings, and then just decides to follow BB-8. I don't know. We'll see. I'm very excited to see if they have a dynamic here. Because they seem to heavily suggest that BB-8 and Dio will be sort of a buddy duo. So I'm hoping that there's more to that than just them being in the same shot. I want these two interacting and like being the new R2-D2 C-3PO. I want something going on between them.
Yeah, it is weird we don't see R2 in much of this trailer too. The next shot we see is inside the Millennium Falcon cockpit, and Chewbacca is in the passenger seat, and in the captain seat is Lando. It's Billy D. Williams reprising his role. What do you guys think of this? I just love this shot of Lando like cackling as they're about to hit light speed.
He got his ship back after all these years.
Yeah, he looks like he's having a lot of fun, although I think it's hilarious that he has not apparently changed his clothes in 30 years.
Hey, his closet is just a bunch of capes and a bunch of yellow shirts or whatever. Yeah. By
the way, Billy Williams is 82 years old, guys. He looks maybe 60. I am impressed by his self-preservation efforts.
Yeah, and a lot of people are saying that the Millennium Falcon looks like it has its old dish, his original dish on it, but it's very hard to see in the shot. Then there's some shots back on this desert planet with this First Order tread speeder that actually is on the floor at Star Wars Celebration. We have photos of that on the site. It's chasing the skiff that has Poe and Finn on it. Jacob, what can we make of this?
Well, Brad sent in some photos from the Star Wars Celebration floor, and they describe the tread speeder as being able to go over rougher terrain than other speeders. It has these treads that I guess will allow it to sort of bounce off areas and recover faster than other speeders would. So it's just another cool Star Wars vehicle. I mean, I like the idea that I've always said this, probably on the podcast before, but I love Star Wars vehicles because they look rugged, look used, and they look like they were built for a purpose. They look like they were designed to be actually used out in the field, and that's what I like about these things. They look like they were actually actively being used in rough terrain.
And something I missed the first 2 times I watched this trailer is the next shot shows kind of like this puff of dirt, and out comes from that like 2 stormtroopers that appear to be employing jetpacks, and they fly at us almost like as if they're flying on brooms from the Harry Potter films. I don't know. We've never seen that, so it's J.J. Abrams showing us different kinds of stormtroopers. The next shot is them on the skiff, and C-3PO seems to be holding on for his droid life. That poor droid. He always doesn't seem to be happy in whatever situation he's in. And
he's incapable of being happy, Peter. I sympathize with C-3PO. He seems doomed everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Probably one of the more iconic moments in this is we see some hands holding the medal from Yavin, right? Like, so who is this?
Chris, you mentioned this first on Slack.
Yeah, my assumption is that's Leia. I mean, obviously, it's most likely a stand-in since Carrie Fisher is no longer with us. But, those hands, they don't look like a pair of young hands. And it would make most sense for her to still have that medal. Now, whether or not that it's the medal she gave Han or it's the medal she gave Luke, I don't know, because it could be either of them because they're both gone. So she could be reflecting on either one of them. But I think, at the very least, it's supposed to be her holding one of those medals.
But the real question is she now going to give this medal finally to Chewbacca, who was left out originally and totally deserved one of them?
As Wookiee racism will not stand. I mean, come on.
We see some shots of Rey hugging Leia, and I'm assuming, this is a shot obviously filmed for The Force Awakens. Although I think the opposite shot where we see Rey and she's crying, that appears to me, if I look pretty closely, it looks like a double. What, Jacob, if you had to speculate, what is Rey upset about here?
Oh goodness, the entire galaxy is falling apart. I don't know. We know so little about the actual plot of this that my in the dark guess would be that Rey's feeling the pressure. She is the last Jedi. She has the entire galaxy resting on her shoulders. It's up to her to save everyone in some way and live to a legacy of 1,000 generations of warriors. I mean, who do you go to when you are feeling the pressure? Your parent figure, and Leia, it seems could be the new mother figure in Rey's life. If Han Solo was her father figure and Luke was her craggy uncle, then Leia is the mother who's there to have her when she needs to cry.
Yeah. We then see a shot of our main heroes that includes Rey, Poe, Finn, Chewbacca, BB-8, C-3PO, and the new droid in kind of a grassy, foggy planet, and they're looking off at something. Chris, I think you were the one that kind of posted this tweet in the Slack channel that suggested that this could be a shot influenced by Akira Kurosawa.
I actually didn't post that, but yeah,
Oh.
It does look similar to that Seven Samurai shot. But as samurai movies and Kurosawa in general are built into the Star Wars visual landscape. So I would not be surprised if that were the case.
Okay, now I think the biggest surprising shot of this entire trailer comes next, where we see what they're looking at, and it's this shot of part of the Death Star, like a destroyed Death Star in the ocean on this planet, and they're looking out at it, and I'm assuming this is the Death Star from Return of the Jedi, the second Death Star. I wrote a whole article on how it's possible that the Death Star still survived, chunks of the Death Star survived. While there's been nothing the size of a Death Star to blow up that was human created, there have been like space stations and shuttles that have fallen to Earth and surprisingly remained intact. So you'd think like a space station of the size of the Death Star that, it would be extra reinforced, and some of that would stay intact. So I guess the question here is why are our heroes like this seems to be part of the MacGuffin of this movie. They're in search of something that is inside this Death Star. Like, does anybody here have any theories?
I don't have any theories about that, but I want to expand on something you wrote about in the trailer breakdown. I guess I hadn't thought about that, and it's a really astute observation, which is that the action of Return of the Jedi takes place around the moon of Endor, not Endor itself. So it's very, very possible that this planet we're seeing that the Death Star has crashed into could actually be Endor, which we've actually never literally seen on screen before, which is very cool.
Which, by the way, in previous years, I had conversations with Pablo Hidalgo, who's part of the Star Wars story group, and apparently the moon of Endor, because everybody just calls that Endor, is now known as Endor. So the planet that the moon of Endor revolves around probably is not called Endor, but some other planet. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. It gets very confusing, but the fact remains that you're right. We never saw this actual planet. We only saw the moon around it. So I'm excited to see this, and I have no idea what they're searching for. I can't even take a guess, but I really want to make sure we got that in there because I think it's a really good observation.
Chris, if we're near Endor, that means we could get some Ewoks. Would you be excited, or just is that adding to your fears of this movie?
Sure, why not? Put them in there. Put everything from every previous movie in this movie. Just go ahead. I don't. It's fine. Just go ahead. Literally call this the Return of the Jedi at this point. It'll be fine.
Chris, you enjoyed much of this trailer until this point, but you seem so down on it as a whole. Like it seems like this ending is infecting your entire outlook of the whole film.
It's a bad ending. I don't know why the Death Star has to be in this goddamn movie. We already got 2 movies with the Death Star, and The Force Awakens pretty much had its own Death Star. And now it's like, well, here's the Death Star again. And it's boring. I don't care. I want something different. Please give me something new. That's all I want.
Well, Chris, the Death Star has been destroyed. It is a remix of the Death Star, and I'm sure you like remixes.
Well, I don't even think it's a remix. I think this is a continuation. This is, I don't know. By the way, the Death Star, the original concept art for The Force Awakens, the original opening, I have an article about this on the site. I'll link it in the show notes, and you can see that original concept art that was published in the book, The Art of The Force Awakens. The original opening had Rey diving into the ocean and actually scavenging from the throne room in the Death Star that had been, a piece of the Death Star that had been submerged. So I'm theorizing that she might be here to find something that is in the throne room, because it seems like JJ has been playing around with this for some time. But the next shot of this movie, or this trailer, this teaser trailer, has Luke telling us that no one's ever really gone. We then hear the laughter of the Emperor, Palpatine himself. And as you mentioned, on stage, actually, the actor who plays him came out on stage just to kind of let people know who, probably, or some people that don't recognize that iconic bit of laughter, that, yes, that is Palpatine, and he is involved in this movie in some way. Now, Chris, or HT, I heard you sigh as well. What are your thoughts?
I was actually on board with the destroyed Death Star because I like the idea of the ruins of the old making way for the new generation. But with the laughter of the Emperor, I feel like that is the opposite. I really dislike the idea of the Emperor coming back and him potentially being that one evil force pulling all the strings of everyone, including the First Order. I think just makes everything so simple and so banal. For the rise of the First Order was always really interesting to me because it suggested that even though you can defeat one big tyrannical force, there will still be evil in the world and others can rise and take its place. It felt very relevant to me in this time.
But even the First Order was the remnants of the Empire. A lot of those people, like Hux's father, were in the Empire, and it was just kind of like...
Yeah, but it's not the same as like one sole person pulling all the strings. It's not like this one person being the symbol of all evil. It's just like mundane evil existing in everyone. And I like that idea because it feels very relevant to today to make things political.
Yeah, it would be like Donald Trump gives a press conference, then he says, by the way, here's the person who's been pulling my strings, and then Hitler walks out on stage. It's like...
By the way, that would be amazing. That would be incredible.
It's like,
I would love for that to happen.
You would love resurrected Hitler? All right.
Yeah, because if that happened, it would all be over for him. Okay, no, Chris, and I do have a response to you, HT, but I'm going to let Chris have the floor here because he wrote a whole article on this, basically explaining why he is not happy with the idea of the Emperor being in this movie. We should address the idea that it could be a Force ghost of the Emperor because, we know Jedi's become Force ghosts. Maybe the Sith become Force ghosts as well. We don't know that he's back. We don't know. We have Brian Young, who did an article on this, explaining how it's possible for the Emperor to return in this movie. He has a bunch of different theories and explains it from all sorts of edges of the Star Wars canon. I will tell you right now, I think Palpatine is a big part of this movie in full. That this is not, a tease at something. This isn't a the words are escaping me, but like
cameo appearance.
Yeah, it's not like even JJ like a swerve of some kind. I think that he's putting this out here in the first teaser trailer to get us used to the idea that Palpatine is back, and having the actor on stage, I think solidifies that, just to so that people know, I think JJ, who keeps secrets for long periods of time, and usually, the movies that he does are about people chasing these secrets, and at the end it's unveiled, and maybe that is Palpatine or whatever. Maybe he's revealed much earlier in this film. I feel like he even knows that he couldn't keep this a secret, and he needs to put this on the forefront and get people used to this. So, Chris, now you have the floor. Why are you not happy with this idea?
It's a bad idea. In the piece I wrote, I do stress that, we don't know what's going on here. For maybe this is like a one scene cameo. Maybe he's just a Force ghost. Maybe he's not going to have a big part. And if that's true, I'll be willing to sort of accept it. But if, as you say, he plays a big part in the film, and there's a reveal that he's been pulling the strings the entire time, and he's the secret big bad of this entire new trilogy, I hate that with every fiber of my being because it's lazy and it's cheap. And it's
I disagree with all of this.
Well, you're wrong, Peter. I'm sorry. It smacks of fan fiction. There's nothing about this that works. There's nothing about this that works. It's so lazy because there was no hint of Palpatine in these last two movies. None at all. And to just suddenly be like, oh, actually, by the way,
there are some hints at what's going on here. There was, if you read some of the books, there's hints that Snoke is being controlled by someone that he might actually
get out of here. No, we're not. Those don't count. We're not.
Okay, let me make my argument for. First of all, I don't love the idea of the Palpatines in this movie, but I think the thing I do like about that is that J.J. Abrams is not just trying to conclude this trilogy as a trilogy. He's not just trying to put a cap on this. He's trying to put a cap on the entire 9-episode film saga. And to do that, he's potentially bringing in the villain that started off the whole thing. The person that, I guess if you read the comic books, I guess Chris doesn't acknowledge any of the outside works of fiction, that he might be responsible for the virgin birth of Anakin Skywalker. So he's the guy that created the Skywalker family. This is the Skywalker saga, and he was the bad guy for every film up until Force Awakens. And maybe it's going to turn out that he was actually the puppet master of Force Awakens and Last Jedi as a whole. I think that to put this in here is going to bring an end cap to this whole trilogy. It's going to give an arc to this whole trilogy as a whole.
But why can't the arc be about Rey? Why can't the arc be about, Leia and all these? But why not just bring Darth Vader back at this point? If you're bringing people back, why not bring? It's.
Well, here's the thing.
Vader, the more interesting villain at that.
Yeah.
Well, Darth Vader it turned to the good side at the end of to the light side at the end of Return of the Jedi. So you can't bring him back.
The Emperor got thrown down a lightning shaft or whatever the hell that thing was. So if nothing really mattered.
Well, so did Darth Maul, and he came back.
Well, I don't like that either. That's really
okay, but this is the thing I'm going to argue, that if you look at this as a 9-episode arc, as a full bit of storytelling, and this is the Skywalker saga, you need to do one of two things, Chris. You need to either have Luke Skywalker die in Episode 9, which can't happen because he already died. You need to have number 2 would be have Rey turn out to be a Skywalker, which none of you guys want to have happen. Or 3, bring back a big bad that like puts this as a whole like cohesive arc.
I disagree wholeheartedly. You don't need that at all, especially since the last movie, the Return of the Jedi, did such a good job of setting Kylo Ren up as, the focus of what. Here's what I'm saying. At the end of The Last Jedi, like it or hate it, Rian Johnson left that movie in a place where you could literally go anywhere. You could go anywhere with that story.
But that's why I say like that episode would have been a good Episode 9. Like that would have been a good like end of the Skywalker saga.
I mean, I won't argue that, but it's not. So it's like we can't do anything about that. I don't know. Like I feel like I'm going crazy here because there are many people online just yelling at this article I wrote because for one thing, they clearly didn't read it, where I try to temper my expectations and admit that I'm, spitballing here. But for another...
Oh, you mean they just read the headline and commented on it with no...
Yeah, as strange as that sounds, I know that never happens on the
People
internet.
on the internet do that?
Yeah, but I don't know. People seem to love this, and that's great. If you're excited about this, I'm not gonna... obviously when I say, you're wrong, I'm kidding. Obviously, if you like this, it's fine. You're allowed to like stuff. Everyone's allowed to like what they like. Like, there are lots of people who hate The Last Jedi, and I personally think that's like the best of all the Star Wars movies. But my point here is, it just seems to me that all people want, and when I say people, I'm generalizing. There are people who aren't like this, but it seems like what people seem to want is just the same old thing. Like the biggest complaint against The Last Jedi seems to be it's just too different. Rian Johnson just took the movie in too different a direction. It didn't deliver on expectations. It didn't play out the way people thought it was going to play out. But to me, that's that movie's strength. Whereas this, if it's just giving us stuff we can easily predict or stuff we've already seen before, that to me is a really lazy way out.
You would have easily predicted that Palpatine is going to come back? Like, I feel like that's the most unpredictable.
Well, I said easy to predict or stuff we've seen ever before. It's either or. I'm not saying it's the same thing. But
Jacob, I haven't heard you weigh in on this topic.
I haven't weighed in because I actually agree with you both. I think I agree with Chris on principle. I think that on paper this idea sounds terrible, but I also think that that J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy aren't dummies. I feel like if this is a decision that was okayed by both of them, I'm ready to sit back and see where it takes us. And to tie something that HT said, the idea of a new generation finally having to deal with the wreckage or the lingering memory of the damage a previous generation did to the universe and having to deal with that could be thematically interesting. So I am going to plant my flag in the middle here and say this sounds terrible unless they explore it in a way that I think is explore it in a way that is thoughtful and adds Star Wars rather than just be a retread of what we've seen before. Because Force Awakens is a blast. It's a fun movie to watch, but it's not doing anything new with Star Wars. That's my concern here.
Well, I think it's going to bring something new to the dynamic between Kylo Ren and Rey, and I could be wrong, and I think you are right. It's all going to be in the execution here.
Yep. So I'm going to say you're both right at this moment in time, and I like you both a great deal. And stop fighting. Please stop.
We're not fighting. This is yeah.
We all like each other here.
Let me jump off that and say, like, I'm obviously going to see the movie. Nothing would keep me from seeing this. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not seeing it now. And I've said this before, but I go into every movie wanting to like it, even if I go in with reservations, even if I go in being like, oh, this might suck. I want to leave the theater being like, oh, that was actually really good. And I really hope this happens here. And I really, I like J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker. I think he's got what it takes. He's got the goods. And if he pulls this off, if he finds a smart way to do this and not just like a scene where at the end Palpatine shows up and he monologues his entire evil plan, like as long as there's some sort of good explanation, I'll be okay with it. But right now, my knee-jerk reaction to The Emperor Might Be Back is this is a bad idea. I wish they wouldn't do it.
I will give you a devil's advocate on Chris's side of things. I love J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker, but I don't think he's ever been good at endings.
He's never been good at endings.
He's always good at like the beginnings. Like, you know, his opening few minutes of Star Trek are incredible. But like, and especially Giacchino's score in that brings me to tears every time. Like, I feel like he's so good at opening. You know, look at the first 2 episodes of Lost in comparison to the end. And I know he wasn't that involved in the ending of Lost. But yeah, so I'm wondering what he's going to do now that he went into this. This is the first time that he's like trying to make an ending. And I think that's
this is the first time he's actually going to have to open his own mystery box and figure out what's inside.
Yeah, and you know what? We haven't talked about the title yet. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. HT, I know you wrote up an article speculating on how you can interpret that subtitle. Like, what are we talking here? Who is rising up?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? It raises a lot of questions for who this title is exactly referring to, because as we know, the main Skywalker that we followed throughout the saga, Luke Skywalker, died in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and it felt to me when I heard this title, I immediately thought, oh, are we bringing back the Rey as a Skywalker theory? Because that was something that was debunked and put to bed in Last Jedi, which was something I really loved about that film.
By the way, I would not say that was debunked. You had an unreliable narrator of Kylo Ren saying,
it was her who said it.
Yeah, he's like, and he knows her fears. So he's playing upon her fears. So I'm not saying that's not the answer, but I feel like it's not as clear cut. Even Rian Johnson admits that it's not a clear cut answer.
But thematically, it felt clear cut because it aligned with the film's overall message that anyone can be a hero if they rise to it. They don't have to be born to be anything. They don't have to be born to be special. And I felt to me like this theory, especially that Rise of Skywalker, feeds into only the Skywalkers are like at the center of this universe, and that feels really boring to me. And also it kind of makes her interactions with Kylo Ren a little bit more disturbing, but in the way that I guess that Luke and Leia had their own sexual chemistry. But yeah, this definitely I felt like feeds into that theory that Rey could be the Skywalker that this title is referring to, and it'll be her rise to be the chosen one and the hero again. And while I'm not opposed to the chosen one theory, I do like the way that The Last Jedi just shatters that concept. And it's just I would be very disappointed if this film title suggests that Rise of Skywalker will retcon what Last Jedi did, even though it's not technically retconning, like you said, Peter. But that's one of the major theories. Another one is that this could refer to Kylo Ren, who is, half Skywalker, and this could be following his redemption story, which is something that I'm not totally happy about either, because I feel like he has had too many chances and just thrown them away. And
but by the way, Darth Vader killed millions of people with the Death Star. Like, he destroyed planets, and at the end of Return of the Jedi was redeemed.
Yeah.
Here's my quick argument against that, Peter, which is that Anakin Skywalker's whole story is a man enslaved, a man who's born into slavery and finds himself serving countless masters until he finally says no more, rejects that master, and redeems himself. Whereas Kylo Ren was born into privilege and chose this life. So that would be my one big argument against that. But, feel free to scoff at that.
No, fair.
Yeah,
That's a fair argument.
I think that he's frequently chosen this path, and he's been given numerous chances to go back and make it easier for himself, but instead he chooses to remain on the dark side and to betray not just Rey, but everyone in the First Order as well multiple times. So, but I always think that's what makes him a more fascinating villain in a lot of sense, because he's not turmoiled in the tragic sense. He's turmoiled in that he kind of did this to himself, and I always thought that was interesting. But
you can't tell me, HT, in Last Jedi, when Rey and Kylo decide to join forces in Snoke's throne room, that you didn't secretly want that to happen.
I mean, I really enjoyed that scene. I did want him to turn to the good side, but then again, at the end of that, he decides that he is going to stay on the dark side after all. And I actually liked that choice because it was interesting, but I also think that it prevents him from ever being fully redeemed.
Yeah.
Which is why Kylo, as the titular Skywalker in this title, may have some issues. But again, like you were saying before, it may just be a question of execution. If J.J. Abrams can pull off a redemption arc well, if he can do it, then perhaps this could be the way it plays out, and I would be okay with that. A few other theories. Leia, she is the other Skywalker who is still alive in the film. And I remember in Empire Strikes Back, or Return of the Jedi, Yoda is the one who says there is another, and for a long time we assumed that was Leia. And so it could be a nice way of honoring Carrie Fisher's memory and capping off Leia's story by making her that titular Skywalker too. And as before Carrie Fisher's passing, there was reports that this film, Episode 9, was going to be Leia's film, as much as Episode 8 was Luke's and Episode 7 was Han Solo's. So I feel like that might be a possibility as well. And my last theory is that Skywalkers are all of us, man. It's Luke Skywalker's legacy that inspires people and is the thing that lives on and rises so that people can rise to the occasion and be the heroes that they can be. And actually, another theory that you were the one who threw this out to the Slack, I wanted you to elaborate on that, Peter. This is the Force Ghost theory.
Oh, well, I mean, Luke Skywalker's obviously going to be in this movie. He's going to be a Force ghost, so maybe the power, maybe he will rise up in some way. I don't really have a way to go with this theory, but on what your last theory of that, the legacy and how Luke Skywalker lives on in all of us. I mean, this trailer has some lines from Luke Skywalker doing voiceover, and he's talking about these thousands of years of generations of Jedi, and that I think that adds up to your theory right there a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to say I think that actually is the correct theory. I think HT nailed it there. I think that is what's going to happen.
I am also team Final Theory.
Yeah, and I think it also is a way of continuing the what Last Jedi did as well.
Yeah,
especially that last shot where with Broom Boy. Basically, Broom Boy is a Skywalker. Everyone is a Skywalker who is able to use the Force, just like Broom Boy, everyone's favorite character.
I do think that we're going to find out that these characters, Kylo and Rey, that there's a connection. There's a greater connection here. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see the film. There was also this panel that we saw before the trailer. It was like over an hour long. Jacob, you wrote a recap for the site. What did we learn over the course of the Star Wars Celebration Episode 9 presentation?
We learned that Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams can say a lot of words without saying anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, and members of the cast, and most of the panel was them dodging questions from moderator Stephen Colbert and kind of giving half answers to avoid things. So I'm going to go over the highlights. You can read the whole article on slashfilm.com.
You know what my highlight is, and it's probably not something you're going to mention here, was Kelly Marie Tran coming up on when they asked her a question, like the entire crowd just like gave her a standing ovation, and she like became like teary-eyed.
I love that.
Yeah,
that was
great.
So sweet.
And fandom, the actual Star Wars fandom in person, making their opinion, making their thoughts on her known after so much toxicity online was a powerful moment, and the best moment of the panel. And even Abrams, the J.J. Abrams said, "I was grateful to Rian Johnson for so many things he did. The greatest for me was casting Kelly Marie." And we got a shot of her in a proper Resistance uniform, no longer mechanics uniform. So yeah, I think I'm happy to hear that Rose is back in seemingly a major way, and now she's not being shuffled to the side because she wasn't part of the original Force Awakens.
Although she's absent from this entire trailer.
That's true. Let's see. We showed a piece of art, or is it art, or is it a photograph? Well, it's an image from the early part of the film that features a landed Millennium Falcon in the jungle with Chewbacca, BB-8, Poe, Finn, Rey, and C-3PO. And this is where Abrams revealed that there's a time jump between Last Jedi and this film. And after being split apart for the first two films, the whole core crew, this whole group, will spend the bulk of this movie on an adventure together, which I'm really happy to hear because these casts have such great chemistry together that the thought of them actually being able to bounce off each other for the entire 2 hours is a lot of fun. They, of course, talk about practical effects, all the practical aliens. They showed images of a new alien named Claude, who's this big, giant slug thing, and he's standing next to Greg Grunberg's Snap Wexley in the photographs. He's really, really cool looking. He looks really dumb in a way that I really like. So hooray for Claude, the dumb-looking, awesome alien. There was comments from Naomi Ackie, who is playing a new character named Jannah, and she would not reveal anything about Jannah. She says, the original group are going on this epic adventure together, and I'm so excited about where Jannah crosses paths with them. That's all she would say.
A lot of fans have speculated that she could be the daughter of Lando.
She had a joke response to that, where she joked that Lando is a very charming man, so he could have children all over the universe. But I'm not convinced that was her confirming or denying anything. But Lando was also there.
Yeah, they had this badass photo of her, and she is wearing yellow, which is the color of Lando, right?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, and everyone would know that because he hasn't changed his clothes in 30 years.
Oh my gosh, she's also wearing a cape. I'm just not noticing her cape, guys.
Yeah.
Maybe she is Lando's daughter.
I want to say I really love her look. It's one of my favorite new looks of a Star Wars character. I like how battle worn it is, how rough, how just kind of.
It's like Fury Road-esque.
Yeah, I like it. It's very punk.
A highlight from this was when Billy Dee Williams took the stage, and he had some quotes about how wonderful it was to be back and all that. But my favorite part was when he was asked about Lando's decision to betray Han in Empire Strikes Back, and he defended his decision, saying that he was up against Darth Vader. He was doing the best he could to save everybody, and by the way, nobody died, so Lando made the right choice. And I thought that was a very amusing commentary. Finn has a new costume with blue pants. Oscar Isaac has a new costume, makes him look like Brendan Fraser in The Mummy. Daisy Ridley dodged questions about whether or not Rey has new powers. We won't see any more naked Kylo Ren.
No, she didn't dodge questions. She asked Abrams, or she tossed the question to Abrams, which to me registers as yes, because if she said no, there was no reason to be like, I'll have JJ answer this if the answer is no, right?
All right, well, Peter, what do you think about there not being a shirtless Kylo Ren this time around?
I mean, for me, that felt weird. It felt unlike Star Wars, but maybe others on this podcast would disagree.
I'm a big fan of half-naked Kylo Ren, so the news of no naked Kylo Ren is very upsetting to me. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
Maybe it's fully naked Kylo Ren. You don't know, Jacob.
Oh yeah, they didn't specify that. They just said half naked. Maybe he goes all the way to this one.
The full Monty.
Yes.
But I would say check out this article that Jacob did. It's called Everything We Learned About Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker from the Star Wars Celebration panel, because it actually has probably like a dozen new photos, some from the movie, some from concept art, some from behind the scenes. And it's a lot of good stuff.
I got to think real quick because we didn't actually comment on this. What does everyone think of the title as a title? I'm not talking about what it means. I'm talking about the title. So I personally don't like it just because of the syntax. I don't like how it sounds. Like, it just sounds like it's missing something. Like, it sounds like it should be The Rise of the Skywalker, but then I guess that would give it like a completely different meaning. So
I will say this, as a Star Wars completist, it does seem weird to me because the three titles of this trilogy are all from the point of view of the good guys, I think. Unless this is from the bad guys. I mean, I guess HT made the case that this could be about Kylo. But if this isn't about Kylo, it's all from the point of view of the good guys. And usually for the first six, it was kind of alternating between the good guys and the bad guys. And also the last installment of any of these trilogies has always been something of the something. And I think that's what you're kind of missing here, Chris, is like Rise of the Skywalker would kind of sound more in line with that, but also moving that the to before Skywalker, I think makes that gives that meaning a lot different meaning, right?
It should be The Skywalker Has Risen. That's what it should be.
The Dark Skywalker Rises.
Yes, there we go.
Also, apparently, J.J. Abrams can't get enough of synonyms for get up.
Yeah. Jacob, what do you think of this title?
I agree with Chris. It doesn't fit well in the mouth. I don't like saying it. I don't like typing it. I have no hatred for it, but it feels weird coming out of my hands.
I feel like it might work better if there was no "the" in front of it. If it was just Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, actually, I would prefer that more. It is that "the" that makes it clunky for some reason.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It doesn't roll off the tongue, but Rise of Skywalker would probably be better. I mean, we'll probably all end up typing just Rise of Skywalker anyways.
I feel like, I like this title. I don't love it. I wish there was something if you're going to tease this whole Palpatine thing, why not go with, I know The Void had the title of the Void Star Wars experience was Secrets of the Empire, but I feel like if they didn't title that would be the perfect title for this, because it seems like Palpatine and the secrets of what is involved there is kind of like the MacGuffin of this film. Also, maybe something having to do with the legacy of Skywalker, but I guess maybe that's saying too much. I mean, also Rise is hopeful, right? It's very hopeful, and I think they wanted a more hopeful title to end this whole franchise.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be one of those titles where right now we're just and then after we see the movie, it's going to be oh, it makes so much more sense now. I like the title.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it is a good way of bookending the series, the saga rather, but I think it would have been much neater if we just called it The Last Hope. That would have been nice.
It's kind of...
Yeah, that works better too. Yeah.
The Phantom of Menace. I don't know. Okay,
the newest of hopes.
Yeah. I kind of liked my idea for the Last Hope. The Final Hope. Or something like that, but I don't know. Okay, I guess this is what we got, guys. So
we'll have to live with it.
Yeah, we have to live with it. But you can check out the trailer on slashfilm.com. You can find all the stories we did today. There's about 10 of them. They're linked in the show notes. You can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Is there something we missed in this trailer? Is there some angle of speculation that we missed on Star Wars Episode 9? Let me know. And please head on over to our iTunes page, write us a 5-star review, tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you next time.